Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wholeness Wisdom Well. I am your host, Lizette Morais, today joined by the beautiful Tessa van Keeken. Welcome, Tessa.
Thank you.
It's so lovely to have you here. And just to introduce you to everybody, let me just read out your beautiful bio. So Tessa specializes in building bridges and holding space so everyone can feel seen and heard and loved. She believes in empowering people to shine authentically and cultivate meaningful relationships with themselves and others. An experienced coach and healer with a background in social science and international relations and conflict studies. Tessa guides conscious leaders and change makers on a transformational journey of self-discovery and personal, professional, and spiritual growth. So welcome, Tessa. And there's so much of that bio that is similar to what we do. And therefore, we're here today specifically. I'd love for us to kind of unpack your journey of what led you to do what you're doing today. So where did this start for you, hon? Where was this moment of realization, I'm called to help others?
Wow. Yes. Well, first of all, I'm so grateful for being here and that our paths have crossed. And that's definitely one big moment of ending up here.
Right.
But how I ended up with my calling. It's funny, like so many people often talk about, right, that one moment where this opening and realization came. And I think it nearly went a little bit the other way around with me, that from a really young age, I was incredibly sensitive to mainly the suffering of other people. I mean, I could feel their emotions, sometimes their thoughts, their moods and everything else. The positive too, maybe, but what stuck was most was feeling the suffering in the world.
Were you
and
aware?
For a long time,
Were you aware at that time that it was their suffering, or did you confuse it with your suffering?
I think at the time I just didn't know what to do with the feeling, like,
Right.
So I was aware that it was just like, it's only later, of course, that I learned the whole ideas of being an empath, a high sensitive person, and all these things, and really distinguishing where it's that pain. But also, in a way, I'm back full circle, realizing that there is not the pain of others and my pain, and it is one whole and collective, so that my healing, their healing, it's all linked. So in one way or another, there was, in a way, a realization already. I just already, as a child, I experienced that wholeness, but I didn't know as such. I didn't have the awareness, the consciousness around it yet. So I think it's interesting that way. But I struggled with it for a long time. And I also, for a long time, tried to not feel, right? To not feel my own pain, not feel the pain of others, to close it off. But that always led to feeling disconnected from others, disconnected from myself, disconnected from the world. So it kind of went always in circles until there came that moment where I deepened my own practice and where I started seeing that it can be both, that I can really practice being more grounded, being more centered. And then when I'm in that space, I can actually stay open to and feel whatever is around me. Just to mention, before we did the session, we did our own grounding, right? To really be present here with ourselves, with each other, and also that presence that we then emanate, shine out into the world. And there's one practice it only takes a minute, and it's such a beautiful practice to just take that, where you really breathe in into your center. In Japan, where a lot of the practices I do come from, they talk about the hara, which is the physical center and your own inner center of the universe, if you like. And then really being in that space and connecting with yourself. And then when you open your eyes again, to then, while keeping that connection with yourself, also connect with others. So you have that true balance. And then there's this beautiful saying of, I feel you feeling me. You can continue it as well. I feel you feeling me, feeling you, feeling me. And what I found so beautiful from that is that within that is exactly that wholeness, but also that interrelation of connectedness, of where to truly be connected, I need to fully feel my feelings. I need to be in connection with that. And I need to also be open so that other people can feel me and I feel them. And then it becomes that beautiful, beautiful flow. And
It is so beautiful and so true indeed. And even as you're speaking it, as you saying it, like I can feel this emission and transmission from you. But then indeed, it is that interconnectedness. I'd love us to stop there because there's various layers of this that can just be unpacked. And the couple of layers that I find is that for a long time in this journey, because it's important that people can recognize themselves where they're at. I can imagine right now that many people think, why on earth would I want to connect?
Yeah.
Right? Because of what's happened in the last 2 years, and I believe there's a huge trauma that is that we've undergone in the last 2 years, which is when I'm on my own, when I'm isolated and in quarantine, I'm actually safe. You know, so why on earth would I want to connect? And if I connect, it's only suffering. So I find that as, you know, one of the first barriers that people have the awareness. And but what happens in our natural nature, indeed, as you know, when we stay too alone, what happens to us, Tessa?
Yeah.
You know, we become depressed, oppressed. And I truly believe it's because this wholeness wants to be expressed. It wants to move from you to I. We desire connection. We desire intimacy. Beautiful. So tell us a little, and then what happened?
Yes. So, and this was it, right? Like, so when I had that connection without the consciousness, without the awareness, without my own strong practice, then it became that overwhelm. Then it was either me losing myself into my surroundings or the surroundings overwhelming me, right? And so again, and then you come into that, I remember as a late teens, early 20s, that I actually had some it's a embodiment type of therapy around it, where they also said, like, yeah, when I would kind of nearly immerse myself completely in others, right? Because again, the caringness, the everything. So I would kind of lose myself. So the practice was to kind of distance myself a little bit. But again, the danger of that can be if we then close too much, then we think a boundary, right? We always talk about keeping your boundaries and not letting other people's emotions hurt you or influence you. But the reality is that that protection layer, what you build, is not a real protection. That's a temporary protection, because as soon as I put up that barrier, nothing can come in and out.
Nothing goes in and out.
And
that's so interesting when you talk about boundaries. They're not boundaries, they become walls, right? Castle walls and fort walls around the heart center.
Yeah. Right. So one of the most important practices for me to be able to deal with being that sensitive and having that sensitivity and accepting that's there, because I can't get rid of it, right? I can't really numb it. I can lock it in for a while, but then, you know, it always comes out. And that's for other people too, right? Whatever you try to protect yourself from, or what you try to keep in, whether you, even if you build a big layer around it, it's still there. So you're losing also a lot of energy trying to keep it where you want it to be, right? Whether either it is something within yourself that you don't want to feel or see, or whether it's something that you don't want to come within, but your energy goes to that boundary, to that wall. Whereas if you learn to practice that, the moment I notice that I'm affected by energies outside me, like affected in a negative way, that it feels like overwhelm or something I can't handle, or someone's energy is really making me feel ill, then I know it's not the outside world I need to keep out. It's me needing more grounding, me needing more centered. I lost my own base, if you like. Now, again, we're not always able to do that. So like using a plaster or using a painkiller, maybe just to briefly get back on track, it's okay sometimes to do that protection, but it's important to realize what it is, that it's a temporary solution in that moment, but to really be able to deal with it, we need to come back to that grounding. So now I know that when I go to that grounded space, when I really feel, then I can be open. And yet, so then I can feel the other. I mean, I still am aware of maybe a negative energy, but also a positive one. But it's just there. It doesn't, it's like the Buddhist practice or the Buddhist wisdom, where they say pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So I see it like that. So it's not that you will never experience anymore the pain of negativity or the pain of suffering or anything like that, but you can handle it. You can actually be with it. You can be able to hold it because you're grounded within yourself. So then the openness, and then I love that, right? In a way, the boundary, your level of groundedness, your level of being really centered, and the more open you can be, that's actually your boundary, right? But it's not a wall. It's
exactly. I think what you're describing, if we break it down, speaks a lot to how people can actually even be resistant to this kind of work. Yeah. But it is the inner struggle that we fight with, which is, I know I feel, but I don't want to feel. So maybe I'll separate myself from what I think is the source of that feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, I just won't care. I can't tell you how many times I've had this discussion with myself. I just don't care. I just don't care. But we can't get out of it because we do care, because we are love, right? Within us. So yes, we are going to care. And if we don't, even if we try to separate and not care, and this is not about not getting ourselves out of toxic situations, but it's about not caring, right? Disconnecting from our own heart, our own feeling, which is somewhere where we want to go hide, that actually becomes the wall of separation. Thinking it's protecting us, but it really isn't.
No.
So the
and it can work for years, right?
Oh, it can work for years.
You can cope for years.
Yes.
But it's coping.
And then what happens? We feel lonely, depressed, cut off, isolated. Okay, so basically what you're saying, Tessa, for those of us that might be in that part of the process and waking up to, I really would love more intimacy, I really would love more connection. What you're saying is we've got to work on our own energy first.
Yes, first and at the same time. Because I think this is also something, right? Well, this is why I created the Embrace movement, right? Because I believe that although we need to practice on our own energy and on our own groundedness and centeredness, you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
You don't have to.
Exactly.
Because also what I just said is there is moments in time I still daily experience moments where I lose my groundedness and where it helps to have support. And that support can sometimes be as simple as allowing yourself to take some time. Sometimes it can be as simple as talking to a loved one or a friend. And sometimes it's that community where you can be yourself, where you will be accepted as you are in those moments where for a brief moment you cannot do it for yourself. Right. So although we always say, like, also these comments of like, you need to love yourself first to be able to love others, there is truth in that. But at the same time, when you can't get there, it's okay to allow yourself to be embraced in a loving space where you are loved as you are, to help you to go back to that space where you can love yourself and then emanate that love into the world. So I think it's important, again, to me, we talk about things like self-love, self-care, self-compassion, but I don't actually believe that. It's just a way of saying it. But really, it's the realization that it's not either caring for yourself or caring for others, but it's when you really practice being compassion, being love, then it always includes you and the other. It's not either or, right? And I think that's why with the people I work with, like mainly are people that are also serving others, that we see that looking after your needs is your way of serving others best. And when you do that as a practice, you actually start realizing it's not really that you're looking after your needs to be able to look after the needs of others, but it's by including your needs, you can see that it's a whole, that it's not actually separated. Right. So that integration is just, it's the most important thing of everything. And I think when you're in that space of awakening, it's also finding your entrance. So for some people, the entrance is to, for a moment, not be too concerned with the looking after others, but really focusing on themselves to really know what they need. But for some people, it works the other way around. It's by really being there for others, but then being mindful of how that feels for them, that way they can include themselves. So again, there's not a simple, clear-cut strategy or answer. It's really that in getting in tune with really listening, really hearing, and accepting that you might not always like what you hear or feel at the beginning, and then going there. Yeah.
One of the biggest things, as you talk about connecting with self, it's actually quite incredible that connecting to self, we're not taught how to do that.
No.
And there was a certain point, I remember my partner saying that a lot of what we do, because although we have different modalities, you and I, the goal is ultimately the same as with all of the council of the master of the collective together. But what I find so interesting is that you talk about it sounds so obvious, connect with you and see what you need, because then that sounds obvious, but we need to realize we were not trained that way.
No.
We weren't programmed that way, and how we weren't even given permission sometimes to even know what it was that we needed. We were told, and this is a big programming thing I come with my clients as well, we were told if I take care of everybody else and everybody else is happy, then eventually I can be.
Yes.
And even if there's one like generational step that we've done to improve that a little bit, we're still a lot there before we ground our own energy.
Yeah.
This permission to be self and know this self at its best is going to help everybody else in the very best possible way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I think you see, and there, what's so important is also to understand when you start on any journey, whether it's like this deep spiritual self-discovery journey or a simple journey going from A to B, right? Just if you go, I don't know, you're traveling somewhere. The problem with these kind of things is that when we start becoming more aware, when we start waking up, then we want it to happen like that. Right? Like I use a kind of, it's not a method, but it's more like, you could still call them steps or stages, but it's like this idea that like we become aware and then we want to take action. We want it to happen, right? And we forget the most important key step. It's like becoming aware, accept, and then moving with or from acceptance into action. Right? And I think that is so important, but we forget because we become aware and then we think, like, for instance, if I become aware that I'm not looking after my own needs, then my conclusion is I need to look after my needs, but it's not working because exactly as you said, I've not been taught. I'm not accepting of that. Or I go into that back and forth, like, going, well, today is my day. I'm looking after me. I don't care anything, but straight away, I don't feel good because I'm disconnecting myself from the whole instead of seeing that my care is part of that whole, right? So then I go switching between looking after me, looking after others. But every time when I look after others, I may feel resentment or I feel that I'm depleted. When I'm looking after myself, I feel selfish. I feel disconnected. Until the moment I realize that there's first that awareness, then the acceptance of what's here and what's not here, where is going well, what's not. And also that acceptance that maybe in this moment in time, I don't know what I need, or I'm not able or willing to give myself what I need or others what they need or anything like that. And then to actually be fully accepting of that that's like that in this moment in time. Because this is the thing. when we do spiritual growth or any type of growth of development, right? If you learn to walk, first you cannot walk and then you can walk. But in between is that moment, like if you look at a baby, in the moment, they're not going like, oh, I cannot walk right now, so what should I do? And maybe I should not try, or maybe there's something wrong. No, they just keep trying. And in the beginning, they can't, and and they keep falling and da. That's all these moments. And then there comes a moment where you didn't know what you needed, where you didn't know how to give it to yourself, where you weren't able to, is no longer this what is here now. But then the moment that is here now is where you are doing that. But that happens in that moment. So in this moment, just be fully aware. And that's difficult in itself because you start seeing the things you don't want to see, right? You start feeling the things you don't want to feel. That's why we need community, someone who can hold you there, where if you can't, that someone else can hold your hand.
Exactly.
There for you.
But Tessa, it's so funny because just the other day, and this is a journey. This is the journey. What I love about you and me is that we are also still on the journey. Just the other day, to give like a very visceral example so people can ground what we're talking about here. I was packing out some boxes and suitcases of seasonal clothes. Like I was going through the winter clothes, accepting I'm not going back to Costa Rica yet. I'm going to be here for the winter. I need some jerseys. So we're busy doing very normal things. But then all of a sudden, I felt I felt like a deep sorrow.
Yes.
In my system. And it started right here in my solar plexus area, actually. And it was funny because just that awareness is already why we cultivate spiritual practice. Yes. So we can have that awareness. So we can like, oh, there's something coming. Now, the normal thing is people want to block that. It's like, I didn't want that. I had shit to do. I didn't have time to now deal. And I had to literally force myself like, oh no, hang on. I am needing something right now. There's something coming up. And I swear, I dropped everything. I sat down and I just said, what is this sorrow? And after that first wave and the tears falling, then came the light of, oh, that's what I need.
Yeah.
And now I could sit in the awareness and the appreciation of what I needed to go and do next. And basically it's having the courage to be able to go and do that, because I've spent a lot of my existence running away from what I'm feeling versus being able to learn to sit with it.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, right?
Yes,
and I think this is also where you see this everywhere. Mm-hmm. We don't like pain, mm-hmm. right? We don't like loss and suffering and grief, but it's part of life. And we also know when you avoid it, when someone passes away that you love, and if you're not dealing with it, it's becoming a stinking wound, right? You will at some point have to face it. Now, saying that, and I think it's beautiful, and I know, of course, you have a really strong practice, and it's so great how you then, the other day, can listen to that and then be there for yourself. I just want to say again, for anyone who is maybe at that stage where it's still quite overwhelming to do so, it is okay to not deal with it in that moment.
Absolutely.
If you feel for whatever reason that you can't cope with it, that, again, you have stuff to do that, I remember going into a meeting and there was some stuff going on, and I, on purpose, I kept it out because I knew as soon as I face this, I break down and I'll start crying. And I have this meeting. So I decided I'm not dealing with it right now. I'm first going through this because, and that's always, but it's that importance of it's a choice, right? It's not like, oh, it's happening to me. I can't help it. I can't. No, I decided if I deal with this right now, stuff will come up. And I'm not in a space right now where I feel I can handle that. So also it's important. And again, community, I think whatever you do, like community is so, so important, because then also when the stuff comes up, that if for whatever reason, it feels like too much, there's others who can hold space for you too. Again, you don't all have to do it on your own.
You really don't.
Yeah.
And you can learn and you develop into, that's why it's a journey, you develop into greater and greater strength to be able to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
And
but
then
I wanted to say one thing on that, and because that's still a journey for me too, especially as like this is my profession, right? I remember, well, first of all, years ago, I had a really bad breakup. It's 10 years ago now. And I had, after that, I had what they called reactionary depression. So it is all the symptoms. It's the same as clinical depression, but it's different because it's specifically linked to a specific situation. So it's also the process is quicker. You get out of it quicker in a way. But for the rest, it was everything. And I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. And I was like, I'm a trained social worker. I've done conflict studies and I've mediation, life coaching, NLP. So I was like, this is not happening. This is BS. I know what to do. I help others with this. So first of all, to accept that it didn't matter how qualified I was, that my whole spiritual development and everything, although it helped me, wasn't enough to not experience this, right? And then the realization that the difficulty of asking for help,
well,
but
that's
even more difficult accepting then the help, because they're not the same.
Yeah.
Right. I can ask for it, but still not really do something with it. And I had to actually fully surrender.
Oh, honey, you are nailing something so important.
Others.
You are nailing something so important for women leaders. And people that are watching this podcast, you know, looking for, these are all women that are empowering themselves, right? They're on their journey. So they're not so much, it's really funny because we almost, from the angle that we're coming in now, it's almost like what I have permission to actually ask for help. The reason we got into this, I believe, at least for me, and for most people like that, most coaches, most healers, is because we were looking for answers to our own suffering.
Yeah.
And where most of the time traditional support wasn't kind of enough. No. It wasn't doing it for us. But what is interesting is to think, because I know the theory, or I'm qualified, that I am going to be above and beyond what the soul is initiating for me to grow. So this is when we become so spiritually arrogant, actually. It's like, oh no, I've learned, I've arrived. Oh no, honey. There is layers and layers that your soul is initiating you to explore within yourself. You are bigger than what we think. So you're talking about your modality, love. What would you call your modality? Would you call it?
Yeah, so that's like, I was looking at that the other day, because for a long time I said coaching, healing, meditation, and all these things. But I realized it's really, it's grown into a merging of that. For a long time in the past, I would have separated my spiritual Reiki healing meditation practices and my more coaching, guiding, counseling practice, but it's merged because I think, again, right? So that couldn't be separate. So now my word really is embrace. So it's the embrace movement. And within that, there's coaching, there's guiding. I sometimes use some NLP, but not on its own, because I think it's too brainy, if you like, you know, but there's elements in there that can be very useful. So for me, it's really that mix to also see and to keep learning, right? Hear new perspectives and whatever fits in there, and also to then help within that, although there is some elements of a basis of that grounding and centering. I think that's really important in combination with remembering that you're part of the whole, the wholeness, the oneness. But after that, how you really work with that, what emphasis you pick. For some people, it's more an emphasis on the more deeper spiritual healing. With others, it's a little bit more heady, I would say, like using more the words, using more the coaching.
Because we're all unique.
core is the same,
Exactly.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's that embrace, because I think we forget. And I love this thing of, you know, the idea of when we embrace, even if I'm the one initiating the embrace, it always includes the other or whatever else I am embracing.
Of
Right?
course. Of
It's
course.
never separated. Yeah.
So I mean, I asked you to join us as one of the collective. And so just can you share with us, why did you say yes to being part of this year journey with myself and with the other 11 council members?
Oh, well, I said yes because of who you are, of course, and because the connection we have, and because I just, as I said, I think anything to do with collective community, anything where people come together
Yes.
To create a space for others, or even just by coming together to elevate the energy in the world, the compassion in the world,
Yes.
to put a drop in that ocean, to that ripple effect of expanding consciousness, expanding awareness, expanding love.
Yes.
Really, right?
We are expanding and we are evolving. And
So,
I do love what you say. It is a co-creation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's actually so funny because when you asked me, I was just in that process of, like, you know, establishing the embrace movement. And one of the sentences I used is that I said that I believe that bringing together people who serve others is paramount to making the world a better place, right? And that to tend to your own healing is like paramount to serve others best. And I think that's for us as the ones who serve, but it's also for anyone. Like, you know, we all serve people in one way or another, whether that's like caring for your loved ones,
yes,
or if it's, you know, as simple as just your connection in your work or in your daily life or your friends, right? It doesn't have to be this big that you're on the forefront, I don't know, carrying the flag to, I don't know what you're doing.
But the big stuff does happen in the everyday. This is part of the illusion, is we're waiting for the big ta-da, and the big ta-da is right now. It's this life, this moment right now. And that is the awakening. It is, oh my God, it is here happening right now.
Yeah. And I believe your collective is, you know, this it's not a program. It's you know, it's hard to say what it is, but it's this beautiful unfolding of what you're creating now, or we are creating now, then also like together. I think that also is, again, that will help people also to see again that every drop matters.
Yes.
And that, you know, if you're a drop in a big ocean, then the ocean doesn't exist without you and all the other drops, right? So don't forget how important every little drop is. And that at the same time, that drop doesn't exist without the other drops either. So your connection with that whole is so important.
Yes.
So I think, that's just like to be able to contribute to that. I just, you know, how else could I say? I could not have said no, right?
I am thrilled that you are coming, and I am so excited as I see the council members come together. So for those of you that are wondering what I'm talking about, at the end of November, we are launching the Woman Leaders Arise Collective. And what that is a community, a collective of masters, of seekers, and all of us are all of that, which I love. But I've chosen 12 people specifically to support this journey because I know that my modality is a shamanic practitioner. I love going into the quantum. I go into what the unseen with you, and we go and face the boogeyman, and we call in the light, and we do all of that beautiful things. But I know not everyone is busy yet on that level of transformation, or maybe not wanting. And that is why we need to look at many different layers of us. So what I love about this collective is that we have got people coming in with the Akashic records, but we've also got neuroscience, and we've also got the paradox of what we're facing on the emotional body, on the mental body, and on the energetic body. And it is that combination, isn't it, that makes it more whole, because we are all of that. We are all of that. I love that you're going to be there, because I know that each and every single one of you carries a key. And one of the main reasons I also chose you, Tessa, is because, like every single one of these 12, you are a person who's been on your journey for a very long time, and figuring out and piecing together. And this is the truth of all the clients, by the way, that are coming. And there is no difference between participant and master to me, actually, because we're all on a journey. I'm creating this container to support my journey too, because I'm still on a journey. We're all on a journey, and we are discovering together a new way of being. We know it's based on love. We know it's based on wholeness, and we are unpacking. Yes. Yeah. Creating the beautiful inner alchemy. Is there anything that you'd love to say, my sweet, as we close up this interview?
I think that's so beautiful what you said, right? And I think that's the thing. I think to be a healer or a coach or supporter or whatever you are, right? It is so important to realize, like, it's not linear. It's always going to be a circular or a wavy, whatever way it works for you. Exactly. But it's like, it's an ongoing journey. The journey never ends. And that sounds, on the one hand, that there's times where that sounds a little bit disappointing, maybe even, right? That there's kind of like, we want to get there. But at the same time, if you can really dive into that journey and, again, embrace it together, then you can see the beauty of actually how wonderful it is that it never ends, right? That it is an ongoing journey. But I think the only way to grow is to realize that you're never finished growing, right? Yes. You cannot, as soon as you think I'm a master, so I have nothing else to learn, then you stop growing. And when you stop growing, you stop living, right? So I think that realization that the same as you, I always say to my clients with every session, every coming together, if in those times I'm the one providing the guidance, if you like, or facilitating, it doesn't mean, it still is that space of I feel you feeling me. We're in it together. We are in it together. I separate myself and teach like outward. Yes. There is no connection. Yes. Right. So that is the most important message, I think, to always know. When you're part of a community, a collective like this, it's that holding space. And sometimes it may feel as if I'm holding space for you. But in the end, all it is that in that moment in time, I'm facilitating for you to reconnect to that space so we can hold space together. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's, I think I'm just very grateful to be part of this. I'm very much looking forward to diving in deeper, getting to know the other people involved as well, like both the other 12 and the anyone who joins the community. And I just think it's this beautiful, beautiful co-creation. We are really creating a new model of collaboration. Just the level of master, the level of people that are coming in to serve is quite incredible. But to have a container where these modalities, this medicine, this magic is available in one space, to answer the question, to answer the call of where the journey is calling me at this moment, that we have mastered pieces of the journey and all of us are on the journey together. That's indeed the idea. And maybe one thing to add to that is because you mentioned that of like, there being these different modalities, different perspectives, if you like. So also for anyone who is interested and starts looking at the collective to see, you don't have to resonate with all of them. Exactly. It's okay. Exactly. Right? If there's any of them that resonates with you, then that's your entrance point. Exactly. And then maybe through that, you may get an interest or benefit from the others, or maybe it is one or two that are your main your main focus, and that's all okay. And I think that's the beauty of this collective, is all the differences, because it's like what we said in the beginning, right? That
Yes.
we all have different entrances, but the core of it is the same.
And what I wanted, I mean, all 12 of you are so very different. And that's also a very, very important reason why I designed it that way, which was I wanted to give multiple examples to women leaders that the expression of their true self, the expression of their wholeness, because I talk about standing in their sovereignty and claiming their sacred service is going to look unique. So I'm giving them 12 different examples during this year container as we walk through this alchemical process, right? This shamanic journey. But as we're building that inner alchemy and understanding, oh, this is happening and this is how I can transform it, then they're going to be meeting these 12. Like, you can have multiple expressions, and everyone in the collective is an expression that is unique unto itself and has permission to be that unique and that magical and that wonderful. And I just thought it would be so fun just to have a community with people who actually feel free to be who they really, truly, powerfully are. And we get to hang out together and learn together.
It's
and
beautiful.
Together.
And I think this is also, it's so beautiful to find your way, to find your true self, or to be your true self, because you're already it. So it's actually remembering your true self. But the interesting thing is, if you focus only on, oh, this is what I like, oh, so that I don't want, or that I don't want, then it becomes rigid, right? Whereas if you are open to all the different perspectives, then that actually either opens you up to things you may not have known were there and are actually part of your path, or it strengthens where some of them may not be your way, but because you're open to them, understand them, listen to it, you can still feel, it actually strengthens your steps on your path. So either way, right? I think that openness of being together with different perspectives, different methodologies is so important always throughout your journey. So I love it.
It is our journey of self-discovery. And that's why also one of the other big criteria of choosing all of you is like you're also not saying what is the right way. You're not saying what is the right answer. The only thing we're doing actually in all of us, and all of us in different modalities, in different ways, and different medicine, the only thing we're doing is helping people connect to their own wisdom, to their own understanding, to their own answer. And the form of that is going to be unique for every single one of us. I can't tell you how many times I've waited for someone to say, oh, just do this and then it's going to work. But that's not actually what
would be wonderful, right? And this is important to see as well. No, in the end it wouldn't, but we think it is. Like I've been in many moments in my path that I just was like, just tell me what to do. Why can't someone just tell me what I need to do and I'll just do it? Just tell me. I don't
and your soul leaving you in the vacuum so you could finally find your own answer, because the light is in you. The joy is in you. The answer is within you. So we're just bridges. All of us, all us 12 are bridges that we found different ways to bridge the gap. But people have all the answer inside them. That's what I believe. We're whole. We just forgot. And it's time to remember, because heaven knows their sacred service is needed and it's time for us. So thank you so much, Tessa, for being here today. Thank you everybody for watching, and please, click on the links below for more information on Tessa, more information on the Woman Leaders Arise. And I look to speak to you next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.